Chick-fil-A President Dan Cathy was quoted last week as saying that he was, quote, guilty as charged for supporting what he called the biblical definition of marriage as between a man and a woman. We are very much supportive of the family, the biblical definition of the family unit. We are a family-owned business, a family-led business, and we are married to our first wives. We give thanks for that. Cathy was quoted as saying, Mr. Cathy's views used to be the national view of marriage in America. In fact, it has, until recently, been the larger view of marriage the world over, since time immemorial. Only in the most recent times has the radical homosexual activist turned the issue into a so-called civil rights issue. But this is not a civil rights issue. A civil right is a matter regarding rights of personal liberties established by the 13th and 14th Amendments. Those rights especially apply to minority groups and women. The gay agenda at its basest level is simply about the way in which two people of the same sex choose to engage in certain sexual activities. What in the world does that have to do with civil rights? What a person does in the privacy of their own bedroom is their right, choice, and privilege. But because I come from a distinctly biblical worldview, I also believe that they are still held accountable to God for the sexual behavior in which they choose to engage. Chick-fil-A President Cathy was further quoted as saying, quote, I think we're inviting God's judgment when we shake our fist at him, saying, we know better than you, God, as to what constitutes a marriage. He went on to say, and I pray for God's mercy on our generation that has such a prideful, arrogant attitude to think that we would have the audacity to try and redefine what marriage is all about. And you know, Mr. Cathy is right. The Bible is clear that God absolutely brings his judgment upon a culture that winks at this activity and calls it normal. God will honor Mr. Cathy whether our culture does or not. God always honors the person or nation that exalts his truth. Recently, Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel said, quote, Chick-fil-A's values are not Chicago values. They're not respectful of our residents, our neighbors, and our family members. And if you're gonna be a part of the Chicago community, he said, you should reflect Chicago values. Let's analyze Emanuel's statement. He says Chick-fil-A's values are not Chicago's values. What was it that Cathy said were Chick-fil-A's values? He said that they were home, marriage, family, God's definition of them all as one man and one woman, and the Word of God as the standard of truth. Mayor Emanuel has openly invited the judgment of God upon Chicago. He has just declared that everything godly regarding marriage and sexuality is not the standard of Chicago. May God have mercy upon them. Chicago thinks that it has filleted Chick-fil-A. I say that Chick-fil-A still has plenty of backbone. I know the Lord will bless them for it. Watch Chicago. Watch Chick-fil-A. You will soon see which one is blessed of the Lord and which one is under God's judgment. Do you ever wish that you could more powerfully, succinctly, and accurately speak to the message of your Christian faith and the Word of God? This is the book you need, The Magic Man in the Sky, Effectively Defending the Christian Faith. This book has been featured on TBN, Atlanta Live, dozens of radio programs, and hundreds of markets. It was rave reviewed by the Washington Times, and it was called a must-read book. Considering the times in which we now live, you need this book. Get it today on Amazon.com or the WND Superstore.